There are tons and tons of people who have sought to enact some sort of purification ritual on a place with bad vibes. Here's the question: does it actually work? History is riddled with unexplained events. You can turn back now or learn the stuff they don't want you to know. Here is an analog that shows us just how common this belief in bad vibes has been for thousands and thousands of years. Not for nothing did I set up the fact that you guys are new homeowners. I don't want to be weird about it, but when you were buying your houses, when you guys were negotiating, were you aware of the various laws which are weirdly specific about selling a house where a death has occurred?
It's a disclosure thing, right? Like you are required to disclose it if it's happened within a certain period of time.
In Alaska, California, and South Dakota. The thing is, you don't really, in the US, you don't have to disclose a peaceful death on the property. If you are in the three states,
just a violent.
Yeah, in the 3 states I just named, then I believe the way it goes is that in California, you have to disclose any death on a property within the last 3 years before the purchase. If you are in Alaska and South Dakota, it's any death within the past year. And if you are in other states, it's going by a thing. I made this up. I'm going to pitch to Noel and Matt here. I like to call it the guacamole rule. The information is available on request. So when you're talking to the people selling the house, or whichever, like proxy of them there is, you have to ask them if someone died. And in many states, they have to tell you.
Wow. Is that like, hey, if I ask you if you're a cop, you got to tell me if you're a cop. Right?
Abracadabra, B. Abracadabra.
Maybe true. Wait. So you have to ask. Like, there's no, that's it. Like, you just have to think to ask.
Yeah, it's like how, I call it the guacamole rule because in many places, guacamole is available upon request, right? In a menu.
Also, it costs extra. But here's the thing, Ben. At some places, I find it obnoxious that they tell you ask for guacamole. Guacamole is $2 extra, and like, has that ever stopped someone from getting guacamole? And like, is that some legal thing? They're covering their asses so they don't get yelled. I mean, I know it's that, but I just find that funny. It's two different sides of the guacamole
cost
rule.
Benefit.
Yeah, but Ben, do you think? I mean, I think this maybe makes sense because if I care enough religiously or in some sort of spiritual way about these sorts of things, then I would probably care enough to ask or do my own research.
Sure,
but is that giving people too much credit? I don't know. Like, I'm just wondering, like, what the logic is here.
Yeah, the logic is somewhere between let the buyer beware and somewhere between tell me what I'm actually buying. The rules do change when the death in question was violent. A murder or a suicide, especially one that's highly publicized, is considered on the same level as asbestos or lead paint or water damage, right? Or maybe a crack in a foundation. It stigmatizes the property. This is seen as something that can affect the home value, which is so weird because it's not the fact that someone died, that a human life was lost there. It's the manner in which it was lost. So violent events in the past still matter. And to many people, they matter quite a lot. We have to ask why. Like, if bad vibes are not real, and if we bracket off secular concerns like social opprobrium or maybe like effects on, I don't know, zip codes and school districts, then we have to note the obvious. That's all that's left. People, by and large, do seem to believe that bad things, bad vibes can remain after the time has passed, after those physical components of those events are gone. And perhaps more often than we.
And it doesn't have to be a death.
Doesn't,
right?
no.
It could just be negative energy.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's what I keep hearing in research for this. Death is a major factor, but maybe that's not
Deep
it.
trauma.
Maybe it's how someone
Yeah.
lived or who
The
lived
school
there.
where children were abused.
Or like, do you have to disclose if the previous owner was a real jerk?
Mhm.
You know, I mean,
This guy, yeah,
yelling at people and grumping around all the time. You know,
like this guy lived here his entire life, and he only tipped 9% to waiters for decades. He brought that shit home. Like, no, but honestly, also what
you can't not, man.
It's
you
a
can't
good-
not.
it's a good point too, Matt, because it's the idea that great emotional danger, harrowing events can leave some sort of impression, and people believe in a lot of this. People will take matters into their own hands, attempting to cleanse out any remaining bad vibes. It's not always a death. It's not always something deeply traumatic. It can be a purification thing. It can be like, imagine you have lived a long time with a romantic partner, and you're no longer together, and you're still in the house, and you say, I want to breathe in and breathe out this bad stuff. So I'm going to burn this sage. I'm going to say some sort of incantation and ritual. I will feel better afterwards. And for many people, that's true. These techniques, of course, we'll focus on smudging for a bit today, and you'll see why. But these techniques can be any other number of things. There's a panoply of belief systems and approaches. You know, we talked about the idea of purification with water, purification with smoke. There are some practices incorporating dirt from one place into another. In the States, one of the most popular secular purification processes is a ritual cleansing through the use of smoke, known as smudging. It's not quite the same as four lemons in the corners, right? Or lemons in the corners. But you guys know smudging. Have you ever engaged in it?
Yeah, my ex-wife, is a good friend of mine, is into that stuff and is always offering to do it for me. And she's into, crystals and pendulums and all that stuff. And I fully support it and embrace it. It's not exactly my bag, but I see how it makes her feel good and makes her feel like I said, an agency over her existence and surroundings. I certainly put it in the same basket as any other religious practice. I think it's great, and there's certainly things about it that I find super comforting.
Smudging's great.
Matt, you're playing poker with some cards pretty close to your sternum. I respect you. It is.
I don't know. What do you mean?
You're being diplomatic. You got them close to your chest. I love it. I respect it. It's not hurting anyone, right? As long as we practice beliefs and we're not harming anyone, and as long as they are not harming us, then do as thou wilt. This is weirdly, the crazy thing about smudging. It's an ancient practice, but it's often sadly misunderstood. It's an indigenous practice. It's a native practice that goes way, way back. And there are a lot of folks out there who, God bless them, as they say in the South, bless their hearts. They don't understand where it comes from. There are practices of old across the world that are quite similar. There's something called seining in Scotland. Indigenous Australia also has smoking ceremonies. Smudging uses the smoke of certain plant matter. Like we were talking about earlier, it might be sweetgrass, might be red cedar, might be white sage, any number of things to accomplish any number of goals. It's not always to get rid of the bad vibes. It might be used just to heal a place or to set things off on the right note as you spend time there. And it's important to clock this, folks. Different communities use different plants and herbs. What is considered super cool and appropriate in one culture for one thing may be absolutely taboo or misused in another. And as we'll see, there are controversies involved in this practice. But with all that being said, takeaway, there are tons and tons of people who have sought to enact some sort of purification ritual on a place with bad vibes. Here's the question: does it actually work? Here's where it gets crazy. Well, whether or not this works depends on what we mean by work. I know. We're at one of those pesky intersections, yet again, of science, spirituality, psychology, and belief. Have to be the downers. Now we have to be the bad guys in this conversation and say, yet again, at least as of the time we are recording this, no supernatural entities have been universally, objectively proven to exist. That means yes, the infernal. That means yes, the divine. That means yes, ghost. All of that stuff has not been confirmed to exist, but don't let that make you throw away these rituals if they mean something to you. If you believe in them, there's a reason. Belief is an incredibly powerful thing for both good and for ill.
Absolutely. It is truly something that we cannot overestimate the power of. We know that it can cause changes in the body, like psychosomatic changes, or the placebo effect, the idea that believing that something is happening to you psychologically can make it happen to your body physically. To some folks, the notion of explaining how this phenomenon works, the power of belief, is a lot like trying to explain magic, and not like how a magic trick works, but like the idea of magic, of things beyond our realm of understanding, of our realm of experience, in this world. To others, though, perhaps the more skeptical members of the crowd, we are describing what I just mentioned, the idea of the placebo effect. But if you keep in mind that the placebo effect is a thing, it is a provable thing, it does provide results. We know this. Even when the participants in the experiment know they're getting the placebo. This has been confirmed in multiple studies across multiple years. So to that end, I mean, can a smudging, provide some psychological and by way of placebo, physical even benefits? I think the clear answer is probably. We've got some examples of studies that have really done a quite excellent job of explaining this phenomenon.
Definitively. Here's one of my favorites. Okay. Researchers at Harvard Medical School's Osher Research Center and Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center found that placebos do significant work. Get this, folks, even when patients knew they were taking what are sometimes called blue sky pills. Let's summarize one of these studies from 2010. So 80 patients had irritable bowel syndrome, IBS. You know what I mean? Your gut hurts, you're having pooping issues, et cetera, and you're like, I cut out the Jamba Juice. What else do I do? I guess I have to enroll in this medical study at Harvard. So they divided these 80 patients into two groups, one of which received no treatment whatsoever. They were just being monitored for their swamp guts. And the other group got placebos that were honestly described as sugar pills. And they were told, hey, take these pills twice a day for 3 weeks. The associate professor of medicine at Harvard, a guy named Ted Kopchuk, who was leading this study, he described it pretty plainly, actually. He emphasized that the participants were told this was a placebo. Now, Ted seems like a solid researcher, a brilliant dude, and a good guy. I think he'd be fine with us playing around and doing a little bit of a dramatic recreation of one of his quotes. This really, I think, hits home for us when we're talking about the power of belief. Matt, if I don't want to put you on the spot, but if you're okay, if you got a good Ted K voice, good Dr. K voice that calls out to you, I think it's time to shine, man.
All right. Not only did we make it absolutely clear that these pills had no active ingredient and were made from inert substances, but we actually had placebo printed on the bottle. We told the patients that they didn't even have to believe in the placebo effect. Just take the pills.
Beautiful.
Sounds
We also just
exactly
have a-
like Ted Kapchuk.
No, it's good. Can we also just get another Matt Frederick out of context quote that just says, "Just take the pills"?
This is
Frederick.
alluding to an earlier guest appearance we did on a show called Macrodosing. Please check it out. We talk about QAnon in depth.
Yeah.
At the end of this 3-week trial, where again, 50% of people, 40 participants of the group of 80 people knew they were taking placebos. At the end of this trial, quote, nearly twice as many patients treated with the placebo reported symptom relief as compared to the control group. And to go on, the patients taking the placebo doubled their rates of improvement, emphasizing that on my own here, to a degree that was, quote, roughly equivalent to the effects of the most powerful IBS medications. How'd I do, Matt?
Just take the pills.
Just take your sugar pills. Y'all be sweet now.
You'll take your sugar pills and you'll like it.
So
damn it.
this sounds like a stretch, right? We're comparing consuming physical placebos to ritualistic acts of cleansing. And that might seem offensive.
Well, it's not that much of a stretch.
It genuinely tracks. In an upcoming episode, by the way, speaking of the nature of belief, we're diving deep through the lens of all things Havana Syndrome. Stay tuned for that. We have a special guest that we hope you like. We like him. We hang out with him. No spoilers. But the long and short of it is this. There is at this point no objective proof that a cleansing ritual, a spiritual ritual, for a house, a temple, or another structure objectively works, right? If you go in after any number of rituals, the gravity of the area is going to be the same as the rest of the gravity. The air pollution is going to be roughly the same, minus whatever air filtration devices are around. People are still going to live and die the same way physically. But that's only because there is at present no scientific definition of what we mean when we say bad vibe. You know, like, look, we've been diving into this for a while, right, guys? We know that there are some mundane explanations for things that people can experience that feel very much like a supernatural experience. Infrasound, I think, takes the Platinum Award, right? Infrasound is probably one of the most amazing explanations for the sensation of experiencing a ghost. But still, there's no real definition of intelligence for humans. There's no real definition of the soul, let alone the angelic or the divine. So I posit that if you cannot, I'm not even positing, it's true. If you cannot define a thing, you cannot measure it. But if it makes someone feel even a little bit better in this chaotic cavalcade of catastrophe called life, if it makes them feel better to do a thing, I'm sorry.
Wow.
Yeah.
Serious alliteration.
Churchy
No, it was
little
mega, dude. It was
accidentally.
mega.
But if you're doing a ritual and it doesn't hurt anyone, then would it not be dickish to, yuck their yum, as Chuck and Josh would say? Like, why would you go out of your way to disrespect something that is meaningful to someone else?